In this video, we're heading to a country that gave us everything from the Statue of Liberty to modern democracy. It's France. But of course, we're going to cover much more than just its food and landmarks. Because if we want to understand the ins and outs of this country, we've got to know its story, including the wild, complicated, and utterly gripping journey that brought this nation to where it is today. And trust me, France's story is epic. So where does it even begin? Well, it all started in 987. That's when a man named Hugh Capet became the king of what was called West Francia. This kingdom slowly but surely consolidated its power, expanded its land, and eventually earned the simple, iconic name, France. Now, kings love land, right? And who had a lot of land right next door? The English monarchs. So a big chunk of France's early story is basically a long, drawn-out neighbourhood feud, the most famous part of which is the brutal 100 Years' War. The 15th century was seriously rough, mainly because of Charles VI. That led to civil war between two powerful factions, the Armagnacs and the Burgundians. The Burgundians teamed up with the English, who then totally crushed the French in 1415 at the Battle of Agincourt. By the 1420s, the English king was even named the heir to the French throne, and at the time, it looked like France was losing. But King Charles VII managed a stunning comeback, driving the English out by 1453. Skipping ahead just a bit to the 16th century, France gets into a whole new set of wars, mostly fighting over Italian city-states. But these wars didn't just bring back loot, they brought back the incredible ideas of the Italian Renaissance. This cultural infusion was fully embraced by King Francois I, whose court was the height of European style. He even established Paris as the country's main residence, cementing its role as the cultural, economic and political heart of France. Then, around the mid-1500s, the Reformation hit. French Protestants known as Huguenots started to follow John Calvin, and this sparked decades of brutal civil war between Catholic and Protestant groups. It was only in 1598 that King Henry IV brought peace with the Edict of Nantes, which granted Protestants the freedom to worship. From this chaos, royal power began to skyrocket, reaching its absolute peak with the reign of Louis XIV, from 1643 to 1715. He was so powerful and so grand, they called him the Sun King. His court was the place to be, and French culture basically dominated all of Europe. Now here's where the story takes a dark turn. When you spend money like the Sun King, eventually the bills come due, and Louis XIV's successors kept up the extravagant spending, including dumping a ton of cash into the American Revolution. The 18th century ended with a bankrupt government, bad harvests, and a massive gap between the incredibly wealthy aristocracy and basically everyone else. King Louis XVI and his queen, Marie Antoinette, were living it up while the peasants had no bread. As the saying goes, let them eat cake, which, well, you know how that ended. The resentment boiled over, and in 1789 the French Revolution officially began. This was a watershed moment in world history, a time when French citizens fundamentally altered their political landscape. So, just to give you the bigger picture, here's the quick play-by-play. To solve the financial mess, the king summoned the Estates General in May 1789. The Third Estate, which was 98% of the people, realised they were getting totally outvoted, so they formed the National Assembly. They took the tennis court oath, vowing not to stop until they had a constitution. Fear and rumour led to the popular uprising and the storming of the Bastille on July 14th, a day still celebrated as a national holiday. They abolished feudalism and passed the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, which basically outlined the core principles of modern democracy: equal opportunity, free speech, and popular sovereignty. The revolution got radical, and in 1792, the monarchy was abolished. Thus, the French Republic was born. King Louis XVI was guillotined in January 1793, followed by Marie Antoinette 9 months later. Then came the Reign of Terror, a bloody 10-month period where thousands of perceived enemies of the revolution were executed under the leadership of Maximilien de Robespierre, who himself eventually met the same fate. The chaos of the revolution created a power vacuum, and who steps into it? A young, successful general named Napoleon Bonaparte. In 1799, he staged a coup d'etat, declared himself first consul, and essentially ended the revolutionary period, which then brought forth the Napoleonic era, where France first dominated, then was defeated, in a series of wars that reshaped Europe. The monarchy was briefly restored afterward, but France was never truly stable. So during the 19th century, they went through a second republic, a second empire, and then a third republic. Then the 20th century brought two massive traumas, like the German invasions in 1914 and again in 1940. After being liberated in World War II, France returned to a democratic republic. Today, France operates under its fifth republic, which was established in 1958 during a period of intense social upheaval. So from a fragment of an empire to a monarchy, through multiple republics, an empire, and two world wars, France has endured, reinvented itself, and, quite frankly, never stopped being a massive influence on the entire world. And one of the reasons why that is because of its strategic location. Because just imagine, France is perfectly positioned, right in the heart of Western Europe. It's the largest country in the region, spanning 551,500 to 552,000 square kilometres, or about 210,000 to 213,000 square miles, and it sits right in the sweet spot between Europe's northern and southern halves, which is why it's always been so important. If you look at the map, you'll see it has a seriously impressive neighbourhood. France is bordered by 8 countries. To the north, you've got Belgium and Luxembourg. Then moving east, you run into Germany, Switzerland, and Italy. Down in the south, the mighty Pyrenees mountains form a natural boundary with Spain, and nestled in those borders are the tiny nations of Andorra and Monaco. It's also got this big stretch of coast on the Mediterranean Sea in the south, the vast Atlantic Ocean to the west, and of course the English Channel up north, facing the UK. But what about the land itself? Okay, so France is basically 2/3 postcard perfect plains and rolling hills. These wide, fertile plains dominate most of the north and the west. This landscape is so good for growing things that it makes France the agricultural epicenter of Europe. We're talking about a massive, broad plain that stretches all the way from the Belgian border in the northeast down to Bayonne in the southwest, rising gently into uplands in areas like Normandy and Brittany. But hold on, it's not all gentle slopes. The remaining third of the country is beautifully mountainous and rugged. In the southeast, you have the truly magnificent jagged peaks of the Alps, which are shared with Italy and Switzerland. Then, just north of that are the lower distinctive ridges of the Jura Mountains, and farther north, the rounded, densely forested summits of the Vosges. In the southern interior, right in the middle, lies the sprawling forested plateau called the Massif Central. This is a range of ancient mountains and even extinct volcanoes. And, as we mentioned, down along the Spanish border, the imposing, steeply rising ridges of the Pyrenees create a truly formidable natural barrier. And to make all this fertile land even better, France is crisscrossed by some of Europe's most famous, most beautiful rivers, which are essentially the historical highways of the country. In the north, you have the Seine River, which of course flows right through the heart of the capital city, Paris. Known globally for its iconic landmarks like the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre Museum. Moving west, the Loire and the Garonne rivers dominate. The Loire is famous for all those incredible chateaux. Then in the south, the Rhône flows into the Mediterranean, and the Rhine River forms a natural boundary with Germany to the east. So you've got these gentle breadbasket plains and fields that make France the agricultural powerhouse it is, but then you also have these majestic, ancient mountain ranges and 3 major coastlines. It's a country that genuinely has it all. But all that beauty is just half of the equation. The other half is more serious. Because if you really want to understand how this country ticks, you've got to look at its politics and economy. And remember when I mentioned earlier that France is currently in its 5th republic? That means it has a semi-presidential republic, with a powerful president and a prime minister who handles the day-to-day government. Right now, France is facing a significant political crisis because the government has lost its working majority, leading to instability. The sudden resignation of the Prime Minister barely a month into the job is a huge red flag. But why does this matter? This institutional paralysis is literally stalling reforms and fueling economic uncertainty. In fact, analysts are worried that this deadlock complicates France's efforts to stabilise its public finances and comply with key EU fiscal rules. France is already under an excessive deficit procedure by the European Commission. If they can't sort out their finances, public debt could climb above 116% of GDP. But despite the political turmoil, France still has one of the biggest economies in the world. For 2025, France's GDP is projected to be around $3.36 trillion at current prices, which is about 0.7% growth from the year before. And this growth is mainly being supported by strong net exports and public spending. Private spending, however, has been held back by the political uncertainty we just talked about. Looking ahead, the political drama is expected to slow things down slightly, with real GDP expected to reach 0.9% in 2026. The good news is that private investment is expected to rebound after 2 years of decline, thanks to projected lower interest rates, which should help speed things up toward 1.1% growth by 2027. Overall, France is a global economic giant with a ton of potential, but its current political squabbles are creating some major headwinds that are being felt directly in its growth numbers and financial markets. It's a country caught between massive economic potential and deep political division. But for now, let's set aside all that tension, because we're moving into one of my favourite topics of all time, French culture. To me, this is the flavour, the je ne sais quoi, that makes France truly captivating. And trust me, you can't talk about France without starting with the melodic hum of the language itself. As soon as you step onto those beautiful cobblestone streets, you're greeted by the French language, aka the language of love and romance, which flows like a gentle river through the conversations of about 66.7 million residents. But listen closely, because France is a welcoming, diverse place, and you'll hear a delightful fusion of other languages and dialects like German, Flemish, Arabic, Italian, Chinese, and even Creole and Breton. So it pays to know a few basic French phrases when you visit, as locals genuinely appreciate the effort, especially when you're sitting down to eat at a local restaurant. As you probably know by now, France is an absolute foodie capital, and for good reason too. Dining here is a performance, a celebration of life where food truly becomes art. French cuisine is built on passion, and much of the social life revolves around those wonderful, lengthy meals. So forget heavy, complicated stuff. Modern French cooking's highly sophisticated, yet refined. You'll be enchanted by dishes like the sumptuous boeuf bourguignon, where tender beef meets velvety wine sauce, or the savoury coq au vin. And you must try ratatouille, a sun-kissed melody of vegetables that practically transports you to the idyllic gardens of Provence. But food isn't all this country's known for. France, specifically Paris, is the unrivaled fashion capital of the globe, especially since it created high-end fashion houses like Chanel, Christian Dior, and Louis Vuitton. And if you'll notice with these brands, it's all about the daily commitment to sophistication. That said, as you stroll through boulevards, don't be surprised to see locals have this distinct, effortlessly thrown together style. That's the famous French magique. Think demure flowy dresses, well-cut suits, stylish long coats, and yes, those iconic scarves and berets. And just like fashion, art and architecture are literally everywhere. You simply cannot escape it, particularly in Paris. The cities are living art galleries showcasing different styles that reflect the nation's history. For instance, you can marvel at the soaring Gothic cathedrals and embrace the graceful facades of Renaissance palaces. As you do so, you'll see influences from Romanesque, Rococo, and neoclassic styles mixing beautifully with modern structures, which, as you can imagine, also extends to the art scene. You've probably heard of renowned artists like Claude Monet, Edgar Degas, and Camille Pissarro, who have influenced the Impressionism movement in the 19th century. So when you visit, you absolutely must make time for the Louvre Museum in Paris. It's one of the world's largest homes to masterpieces like the Mona Lisa and the Venus de Milo. But the French artistic spirit isn't just stuck in old oil paintings, it thrives in modern media too. Cinema holds a deep and special place in French culture. The French film industry has a rich and storied history, dating all the way back to the birth of cinema itself, with the pioneering works of the Lumière brothers in the late 19th century. It's an art form that offers a love letter to life, exploring the complexities of human emotions in a powerful way. French filmmakers are committed to artistic expression, producing both globally famous mainstream films and unconventional, independent features. Every year you can even catch the French Film Festival, a fantastic way to dive into the national soul through storytelling. So from the language, the food, the high fashion, and the art that inspires the world, French culture is a beautiful tapestry of passion, style, and history. Now, I want to hear from you. We only scratched the surface with the Mona Lisa and coq au vin. If you've got a favourite hidden gem, maybe a mind-blowing film by a director we didn't mention, or a French dessert that absolutely changed your life, drop those names in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, you'll love this next one.